Time for business then. Matthew Warren here today with the business. Spain still in the eye of the storm very much.
Yes, that's right, Stuart. Yesterday we heard from the Budget Minister, Cristobal Montoro. He was saying that, in fact, he said that Spain does not have the door to the markets open. What he meant by that was their borrowing costs are getting really high. Well, yesterday the Prime Minister, Mariano Rajoy, had added his voice to calls for a European banking union.
On the day that Spain's Treasury Minister said the government's borrowing rates are so high that it's effectively barred from the markets, Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy outlined a number of measures necessary to restore confidence in the banking sector and the euro.
In my opinion, it needs fiscal integration with a fiscal authority and the integration of the banking sector, a banking union with Eurobonds, with a supervising entity and a European Deposit Guarantee Fund.
Rajoy's call for mutualized debt will not please Germany, which is worried that its banks would have to bail out banks from other nations. On the other hand, Rajoy has added his voice to the growing chorus calling for a European banking union. Banks would be charged an annual levy of 1% of deposits. The money would be held in reserve and used in an emergency to prop up troubled banks with guarantees or loans. On Tuesday, the German finance minister too endorsed the idea. It would include deposit guarantees, a central banking oversight body, a pan-European bank restructuring system. Such a framework could help Spain's more vulnerable banks. The government has pledged to rescue its ailing lender, Bankia, and has asked Europe for help to do so. But Germany says any EU aid would have to come with supervision of Spain's banking system. A banking union would provide that oversight, but it would not come into effect before 2014, which may be too late to help Spain.
Well, we heard about steps towards a banking union in that report, and today we'll hear more from the EU's Internal Market Commissioner about some first steps on that. Michel Barnier will be introducing proposals we think that will include things like imposing a levy on banks, requiring transfers between governments when required to help other governments, and also forcing write-downs on bad loans. Well, earlier we spoke to our Brussels correspondent, Frédéric Simon. He told us that not every country is likely to welcome the proposals.
Barnier's proposal today would include an obligation on all EU countries to lend to a government that doesn't have the reserves to tackle a banking crisis on its own. But of course, this is not to the taste of everyone. Germany, for example, is reluctant to sign up to a European scheme that would see its taxpayers pay for the restructuring of banks in other countries. And Britain, of course, fiercely resists any attempt by Brussels to impose EU controls over the City of London.
Frédéric Simon there in Brussels. So what about the markets then, Matthew? How are they opening today
Opening up in Europe pretty positively. Of course, the markets in Europe very keen to see what happens at the European Central Bank today. We'll see whether they're doing anything with their main interest rate. But for the time being, up the DAX, they're even up 1%. And just to give you some news we got overnight as well about Australia. Their GDP growth is going very well, up 1.3% in the first quarter. They're only expected to do about 0.7%. So that was double, and 4.3% for the full year, which is very good. We can also have a look at Asian markets and how those closed overnight, and those were mostly in positive territory as well. The Nikkei up 1.8%, but the Shanghai just slipping. Well, let's get a bit more of the day's company news. And ratings agency Moody's has cut the credit ratings of 6 German banks. Commerzbank was the largest of the banks getting a downgrade. Austria's 3 largest banks also had their ratings cut. Moody's said the 2 economies are relatively strong, but they are at risk if the Eurozone crisis deepens.
Olympia shares rose to their highest level in 3 months on Wednesday. The company was boosted by reports of a €500 million investment by Panasonic. Olympus is still recovering from a €1.4 billion accounting fraud. The scandal led to widespread management changes and halving of the share price.
And Abu Dhabi's Etihad airline has bought a 4% stake in Virgin Australia. It's the 4th time this year that the company has taken a stake in another airline. Recent investments include stakes in Air Berlin and Ireland's Aer Lingus. Etihad's looking to expand its global presence with the acquisitions.
Now, Argentina has sparked outrage when it decided to nationalise the local operations of the Spanish oil giant Repsol. Undeterred, the company yesterday presented its new board. Argentina's president is happy with the company's ambitious expansion plans. She did, though, just have one little bone to pick.
Argentinian president has put YPF's new board of directors on notice.
On the new board of directors, we have... Wait a moment, we haven't got any women now that I realise. Dear Lord, well, they only last a year in that position, so they better behave well, because if they don't, women will take over.
At the same meeting, the new CEO of YPF announced an ambitious 5-year investment plan, saying it will take up to $7 billion a year to increase oil and natural gas output.
In 2013, we will be drilling in more than 1,000 wells, and for those who know about the oil business, or those who have worked in YPF before, this level of activity hasn't been recorded in this company since 1996.
The country sits on what could potentially be the world's third largest reserves of unconventional oil and gas, locked away in shale rock. Argentina's center-left government expropriated YPF by seizing a majority stake from Spain's Repsol 7 weeks ago. Officials had argued that Repsol failed to invest properly in the company and blamed Repsol for Argentina's 80% drop in crude oil output and 100% fall in gas production over the past decade. This turned the country into a net energy importer for the first time in 17 years. The recovery of the national oil company, which was privatized in the 1990s, has been hugely popular inside Argentina, despite warnings from Europe and the United States that it could further isolate the South American country economically.
Now, America's Supreme Court, used to dealing with important constitutional matters, of course, yesterday their minds are on rum.
Rum. Havana Club rum, to be exact, Stuart. Now, this is a big legal dispute, been going on 10 years. The French company Pernod Ricard uses Havana Club rum outside the US. Bacardi uses it inside the US. So Pernod Ricard has been trying to get them to stop. It's gone all the way to the Supreme Court, and they said no, Bacardi can carry on using it. The chairman of the Cuban company involved said he thought the US should respect legal rights and that he thought the decision was politically motivated.
The fact the US do not do that is a clear example that they carried out another measure against Cuba as part of the blockade we have been subjected to for over 50 years for having had a revolution. What more can I say?
Nothing like a good bit of rum. Nice stuff. Matthew, thank you very much. Matthew with the business and the latest news very shortly. Claire will be here after the break.
Join us in France's military quarters for a show dedicated to health in combat. From doctors in Syria to artificial blood in Afghanistan, we investigate war medicine on and off the battlefield.
Don't miss Health today, 10:15 a.m. Paris time on France 24.